say their name so that people all have a sense of who they're talking to, and it's not just some people who know a lot of people, but like everybody knows. And then it's a good idea to have an agenda review to say, this is what's going to happen in the meeting today. How do people feel about that, right? And then it's like getting people on board. Like, okay, some people might say, actually, I wanted to talk about this thing. It's not currently on there, and that's the moment when it can be added into the agenda. And then, as I was mentioning, you can do a time where there's report backs for people who've been assigned certain tasks, or if they're working groups or whatever. Those people can report back to the group, and it's different than a time when people talk about new proposals, because it's stuff that people are doing on an ongoing way. And then you can have a time for proposals. And proposals are when people come with something new, and they say, I think we should do this, and I want to hear what other people think about this. And it's good to actually have a time in the meeting that's specifically dedicated to that conversation. And decisions get made.
Anybody else like a blanket?
Anybody else like a blanket? Okay. Now, once there are decisions made, once you get through a proposal section, it's actually a good idea to have a time in the meeting where you review the decisions. These are the things that, and it doesn't have to be a really long thing, right? But it can be the facilitator or facilitators can say, we decided to do this, and these people decided that they're going to follow up on it, right? These people have been assigned to this task. And that way there's a sense of like, this is what's going to happen, and these are the people who are going to do it. And then it can be useful to have a time in a meeting where there's announcements, where people can say, there's this thing happening. I think you should go to it. And it's a good idea then to also have it toward the very end, talk about when's the next meeting, when's it going to happen, where's it going to be. Most people might know already, but it's good just to remind everyone. And sometimes you actually have to decide, right? When are we going to meet again? And the other thing you can do, which is optional, is at the very end you can do an evaluation. You can do an exit go around where you basically say, how was this meeting? Is there something that in the future you would like to do differently in how we're meeting? What was hard in this meeting? You know, what do you feel positive about that happened today?
Yeah. Maybe a good way to go about that would to have everybody would have like a sheet of paper and use like a Likert scale, say on a scale from 1 to 10 rate your satisfaction in this meeting, and then any other comments.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a really large meeting, that might be a good idea, but I do actually think it's worthwhile for everyone to actually hear what other people say about the meeting. Particularly if they're going to be different people who take different turns being facilitated, taking responsibility for them. Yeah.
Dylan's very soft-spoken. That's his character. Could you please speak up for me?
Oh, can you repeat what you said?
Oh no, I was just asking if maybe, because he was talking about at the end how people might evaluate the meeting, say what they liked about it, and I was just asking if maybe a good way to go about it was
at the end, yeah. Okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my really basic review of this sample agenda. Does that make sense? Like what I just said, does that make sense to you? Do you have other questions about it? Okay. So a few things about this. After you do introductions in a meeting, and I particularly experienced this happening here, there can be people who are present who've never been at a meeting before, right? They've never been to a General Assembly. And at that point, one thing you can do is you can actually have 1 or 2 people who previously volunteered to do an orientation, who basically say, at this point in the meeting, while other people are doing these report backs, anyone who's never been to a meeting before, come with this 1 or 2 people, and for 10 minutes, they're going to tell you about Occupy Sudbury. They're going to tell you about what we do in our meetings, and they're going to answer any questions you have. Because otherwise what happens is you have people in the meeting who've never been there before, and you have a bunch of people who have been there before, and there's a real disconnect between their experiences, and it can be really disruptive in the meeting to try and explain to people what's going on, right? And they might actually feel, if they don't get enough explanation, they may never come back. Because they may be sort of like, I don't understand what was going on there. I didn't feel welcome there. I'm not going to come back around. But if you have people who are specifically there to do some sort of orientation activity, and by orientation I don't mean anything complicated, I just mean by saying, welcome, you know, like, this is how we're doing stuff. We encourage you to participate. Now, the other thing, and I'll talk about this more and I talk about roles, is in the meeting and through the agenda, the main point is trying to create a culture where people feel like they can participate, right? Where they're not feeling shut down, where they're not feeling like they're stupid, where they actually feel like they can speak up about stuff. So that's, in many ways, by providing a structure, like of this is what's going to happen, you're trying to create a format where more people feel like they can step into that structure and share and contribute to the decision. Now, another thing, a tip, is it's really important to finish one thing that you're talking about before you move on to the next thing. And that's another reason why an agenda is useful, because you can say, we're in the part where we're doing report backs, right? Mike is going to talk about the ongoing work to dismantle the structure. He's giving a report back on that. It's really important to finish that topic, that report back, before moving on to another topic. Otherwise, it can be really crazy making, right? Because Mike can be giving his report back about the structure, while at the same time somebody else is trying to talk about food, right? And then it's like all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, that happened at our last meeting. I like the time limit, and people that show up late are rehashing previous subjects. So I think the facilitator should say, "I'm sorry, that has already been addressed. If you would like to find out the answer, stick around after the meeting. Somebody will bring you up to speed. Let's move on."
Yes.
Because an hour out in the cold is hard for a lot of people. Or tobacco addiction.
Yeah.
And I think a half-hour general meeting should be a sufficient time to address everything. And like you say, the committees report, and then maybe somebody do their thing and finish that subject. Because we had how many consensus, whether we're going to tear it down, what, 3 or 4 last meeting? Before it finally got put under the rug.
I felt that was Episcopalian.
What do you mean you felt like it was Episcopalian?
Oh, down there, there's like the singing church.
Yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying with the twinkling stuff. Yeah.
And yes, I think we need the signal thing, because nobody seemed to be sure. I only know I agree. I want to add, I disagree, and I totally block that. And there's, what, 5 or 6 others? I'm not sure. There's like louder.
Yeah. And I mean,
Yeah, louders like this.
Yeah.
Like I can tell you all the hand signals for training when I use this phone, but I can't tell you all these.
all those things.
I can't tell you that abbreviation text messages. But I'm going off topic.
Well, no, I was just going to say, on the topic of the hand signals, I know a lot of people are into hand signals, and at other Occupy sites, people are really trying to use hand signals in a consistent way. One problem with hand signals is, if you got a lot of new people, they don't understand what those things mean, right?
Exactly.
So you have half the group that's doing the twinkly thing, and everybody else is kind of like, what? You know, or the wrap up, which is a good thing. You know, it's good for a facilitator to say, hey, you've been talking for 5 minutes about this tangent, can you please wrap up? But if the person doesn't understand your hand signal, then they don't know. So it can be, if you're going to use hand signals, it's good at the beginning of the meeting for the facilitator to say, we're going to use these 5 hand signals. This is what they mean.